So yeah, do you think, what about more aggressive action by the European Central Bank? Is that a popular thing in Germany? I mean, the sense that we have is that the German sentiment is so strong against inflation that they wouldn't support any action against the central bank, or there would be popular outcry.
Yeah, when we talk about monetary policy, there is indeed a very specific German view. You're right, Germans really don't like any central bank to act aggressively, even if necessary, and I think it is necessary. It has lot to do with our history. Most German media root the German sentiments against aggressive central bank action to the hyperinflation we had in the Weimar Republic in 1923. I don't think that this is true because most people, all people, did not live through that time. But, after the Second World War, the Germans had no nice history to look at. So they identified themselves with the economic miracle, with the introduction of the Deutsche Mark. And the Deutsche Mark became something they relied upon. And I'm not sure if you saw their pictures, but even during the German reunification, before the Eastern Germans voted for to enter Western Germany, they shouted that either the Deutsche Mark is coming to us or we will go to the Deutsche Mark. So the Deutsche Mark was something very innate to the German sentiments. And introducing the euro, politicians promised the Germans that everything will become very German, like the ECB will become a copy of the Bundesbank. And now they see that this is not possible, and of course they don't like it.
Okay. Yeah, that's interesting. I mean, I think that in the United States, there's a subset of people who have really sort of like strong views about the dollar and have a lot of emotional attachment to the dollar. Mm-hmm. We struggle with that as economists. Is the elite opinion in Germany similar to that? I mean, what do most German economists think about this?
Oh, actually, I think the German economists themselves are quite quiet. It's not like in the United States where we have so many prominent economists making up their views. Of course, we have, for instance, Wolfgang Franz, who is the head of the Economic Council to the government, if you want to call it that. It's a Sachverständigenrat. He is very skeptical about a more aggressive ECB. We have Sinn and Hans-Werner Sinn and other economists which are quite opposed to more aggressive actions by the European Central Bank. But I can imagine, and I know some, who are very pragmatic, but pragmatism is not a German spring, I guess. And when it comes to the elite differs from the general public. The elite favors, often as expressed in media, in a more aggressive stance of the European Central Bank, but foremost because they are pushing for a fiscal union and for a strong European level. And that's different to the general public, I guess.
So do you think it's more likely that something will be done with a direct bailout than with the ECB coming in and acting as lender of last resort?
Unfortunately, actually, the entire EFSF thing is the result of German politics and other politics refusing to accept that the European Central Bank is the natural institute to act as a lender of last resort instead of implementing a weakling like the EFSF.
Right. So,
I guess we share the view.
I guess we do. But is it realistic that that's going to happen? I mean, so how likely do you think it is that this whole thing will fall apart?
I don't know. There is a lot of uncertainty about what will happen with Europe. Actually, I think because the EFSF is unable to act sufficiently, the ECB has to step in. And this is my bet. But of course, it can also break apart. But German politics still argue that if the euro fails, the entire European Union will fail, which is of course nonsense. But at the moment, the political level and the elites are pushing forward for more integration. So I think the ECB will step in.
And what would that look like if there was more integration? Like, are you talking about? We'll just talk about that a little bit.
Okay. First, let me say that I favor more aggressive actions by the ECB, but we have to distinguish, and this is very hard to do if we are in a liquidity crisis in Europe, and the yields, the spreads we see are liquidity premia, or we are in an insolvency crisis, like Italy is insolvent or not. It is actually not as easy to say because whereas Ireland is probably just illiquid, or France, the spreads in France and even in Finland and the Netherlands, the spreads are increasing. The case is not so clear in Italy, which has very bad political institutions, which has no growth at all since 10 years or so, which has actually decreasing total factor productivity, which is an economy based on small and medium-sized enterprises, which usually are not the generators of innovations and stuff like this. And the same is true of Portugal. So if we have a liquidity crisis, the ECB should just come in and buy these bonds, and if not, we of course sooner or later need really heavy haircuts, and then the ECB should come in and back the banks. So the solution is quite different, but in either case, the European Central Bank has to step in aggressively. The problem, and this is the answer to your question, in Europe, more integration does not mean that you think about how the ECB should step in, but they are trying to strengthen the strange growth and stability pact, which means that there is some commissioner who decides the right level of nominal wage increase in Germany relative to the wage increase in France. So economic integration in Europe means that economic variables should be determined by political decision makers. And this, of course, is a problem in itself.
Right. So is that currently the case in any way, that wages are determined by politicians?
No, not yet. The European Union just decided the so-called six-pack, which is a package of legislative acts, which includes what they call macroeconomic surveillance, which means that they look for like current account imbalances and then take political measures to correct them. The problem is they are not saying yet how it looks like. Like is a French president able to determine the labor unit cost in Germany, or are we able to determine the debt level in Greece? And I'm not sure how this can happen because we are nations. We are cooperating nations. We are not a federal state at the European level as the United States. So I actually don't know how they want to do that.
And let's say you thought that wages in Italy needed to go down. Like, how would you go about implementing that? Like, let's say the EU decided that. What steps would they take to make that happen?
I don't know. I have no idea. I read the speeches of Barroso, who is the president of the European Commission, and Olli Rehn, who is the vice president of the Commission and responsible for the monetary union and the euro. And they are not yet telling us what to do. I guess it is about, what they implemented is a mechanism of fees. Like you are paying 0.2% of your GDP as a fee if you not listen to what the euro level is telling you. The problem is it never worked in the past, and now they even strengthened the pressure, and I don't see how this can happen. they implemented what they called reverse majority. Up to now, it was like the Commission is asking the Council, which is the where the chiefs of governments sit together and decide. The Commission asked them to implement the fees, and they just said, or they suggested, and they said no. Now it is like, if they don't say no, it will actually happen. So it is what we call a quasi-automatism.